Okay, I'm back with Mary Kay Way, Chapter 7. I got interrupted there. Here we go. Okay, the advisory committee reacted to our suggested solutions and offered more feedback. They liked some of our ideas, but certainly not everything. We returned to the conference table and spent many more hours making revisions to comply with the advisory committee suggestions. Once again, we presented our ideas to the committee. After further modifications, we came up with something that was agreeable to both groups. Having secured the independent national sales director's support, the next phase of our follow-through was enlisting the support of the sales directors. Each year, we conduct leadership conference in different city, and the next conference had already been scheduled. Realizing that it's natural for people to resist change, we immediately began to prepare our presentations of the new sales ideas to the sales directors to solidify the endorsements of the national sales directors. During the conference, we experienced very little resistance because we had clearly demonstrated that the original ideas had come from the grassroots of the organization. We had done our homework by carefully thinking through all the phases of the solution, and we had involved target groups, national sales directors that and had engendered their support. But the procedure also suggested, but the procedure also succeeded because of a fourth element, already firmly accepted. This was our in-place communication mechanism of listening, involving others to help formulate solutions, and following through. Every one of hundreds of thousands of beauty consultants knows that she can present an idea that will be fairly judged in an open forum, refined and perhaps reconstructed by others, then possibly implemented by all. Each idea has an equal chance of rising or falling by the weight of its own merits. I think this is significantly different from those organizations in which you might hold a high position before your ideas will be translated into action. The best kind of follow-through is immediate. Managers can also fail when follow-through takes too much time. An automobile salesman once told me how he and 14 other salespeople had gone to their dealer and sales manager to express major grievances. We had some bitter complaints about the commission schedules, the fringe benefits, and the long evening hours, he told me. So one Sunday afternoon, we all met for 4 hours at the boss's home to review these problems. Our dealer and sales manager listened intently, and were in full agreement that our compensation plan was obsolete and non-competitive with the other dealerships in town. We put in a lot of hours that day, but we all went home very happy, because we felt that we finally got through to management. The fact that our problems were very real. We thought the meeting had been a huge success. That's wonderful, I said. You've got to give them credit for being good listeners. Oh, they listened magnificently, he said, but that's all they did. They never followed through on a single thing. Weeks and then months went by without a single word from them on what changes would result from the meeting. Every time we'd bring up the subject, they'd have some sort of excuse. This is a bad time to discuss it. Don't worry, we'll get to it, but don't expect changes to happen overnight. It must have been very demoralizing, I commented. As bad as morale had been, it got even worse, Mary Kay. 3 months after the meeting, 4 of our salesmen had quit, and sales totals by those of us who remained had dropped considerably. Eventually, these car salesmen didn't get what they were after, but the changes weren't appreciated. Did get what they were after, finally, but the changes weren't appreciated because of the length of time required to implement them. The goodwill that could have been gained by immediate follow-up was lost. Trust is also an important element of follow-through. A branch manager of a department store told me about an inexcusable act committed by his district manager. My buyers were very upset over the company's policy regarding travel allowance for buying trips, the manager told me. I, in turn, explained these complaints to my district manager during one of his trips to Dallas. The district manager assured me that he would immediately see to it that certain changes were made to satisfy what he considered to be realistic and justifiable. I'll call you at the end of the week to let you know that the home office has given its approval, he told me. The hitch, however, was that the branch manager told his buyers to be expecting those changes guaranteed by the district manager. I wanted to let them know immediately because they were all getting ready to leave on a major buying trip to New York the following Monday, and I wanted to cheer them up. But at the end of the week, my district manager called and said, "I'm sorry, but there are some complications. I won't be able to help your buyers this trip, but don't worry, we'll get them what they want for their next trip." To make it a long story short, Mary Kay, the home office turned down the change that he had guaranteed. It upset my buyers so much that I lost 2 of them to a local department store. Never make a promise that you can't keep. While this district manager was probably acting in good faith, in his overzealous effort to please the branch manager, he showed poor judgment. A manager should never make a promise that something will be done unless he is absolutely sure that it will be done. A broken promise is devastating for those who have been disappointed, and there is no excuse for it in management. Furthermore, a manager should never make a commitment unless he has the complete authority to do so. In the preceding case, the district manager would have been wise to say, "I've heard all of the grievances and I will take them back to the home office and get back to you shortly. I'll see what I can do." If he felt strongly that certain changes should be made, he might have added, "I can't give you any guarantee, but I do want you to know that I am in agreement with you, and I'll do my best to argue your case to my superiors." By saying this, he would have demonstrated his support and also offered what he felt was needed, on-the-spot encouragement. Then, had he failed, as in this illustration, his expression of hope would not have backfired. I think it's best to use utmost caution. False hope is destructive. Follow-through requires discipline and training. Pardon me. Discipline and planning. Correspondence is an area in which people often fail to follow through. Most of us don't like to write, and we naturally tend to put those things off we don't like to do, but people do become irritated, and justly so, when they receive no response to their letters. In fact, most people take it as a personal insult. So if you're looking for a good way not to influence people, leave your mail unanswered. The same goes for unreturned phone calls. I've always answered my mail. If the subject falls into another person's area of expertise, I make sure that it's appropriately forwarded. However, since it was addressed to me, I'm the one the sender expects to reply. So when I send it to a third party, it is still my responsibility to make sure it's answered. In order to ensure that matter gets a quick response, I attach an action tab requesting that a copy of the reply be sent to me. Unfortunately, we have a few managers who don't follow up on their letters as well as they should. So each Friday, I review my files, and if I haven't received my copy, I keep asking till I get it. That's follow-through. There are many tasks that all of us are required to do but preferred to avoid. Writing letters is one example. This trait reminds me of a story I once heard about Ivy Lee, a renowned efficiency expert who called on Charles Schwab, former president of Bethlehem Steel. "If I could increase your people's efficiency and your sales by spending just 15 minutes with each of your executives, would you hire me to do the job?" Lee asked Schwab. "How much would it cost me?" Schwab inquired. "Nothing unless it works. In 3 months, you can decide and send me a check for whatever you feel it was worth." The industrialist nodded his head in agreement. Then Lee proceeded to conduct individual meetings with all of the best Bethlehem Steel executives, in which he asked each person to make a promise. For the next 90 days before leaving his office, at the end of the day, the executive was instructed to make a list of the 6 most important things he had to do the next day and number them in order of importance. The executive was told to scratch off each item after finishing it and go to the next number. If something wasn't done, it was added to the following day's list. At the end of the 90-day period, the increase in efficiency and sales had pleased Schwab so much that he sent Lee a check for $35,000. Lee had taught them follow through, and that was a quality for which Schwab was willing to pay a lot of money. I was so impressed by that story's message that ever since I've made my own daily list, and it's worked wonderfully for me. My list keeps me on track, and I give it all the credit when people tell me how well I follow up. I write down everything that requires follow through, and once on paper, it becomes a tangible commitment that I must attend to. It also disciplines me to do the things I'd rather not do, the kinds of things that most people tend to put off and never get around to doing. I've taught independent sales force members to do the same thing, and I always tell them, don't trust it to memory. If you don't write it down, you'll never get around to doing even the most well-intended task. And the people who use it realize measurable improvement in their time management efficiency. Increasing my workday also provides me with more time to be a better follow-through person. Some time ago, I reasoned that since there are only 24 hours in a day, the only way I could get more mileage out of these hours was by rising at 5 a.m. With no phone calls or other interruptions, those early morning hours are very productive. Word got around through the sales force about what time I get up, and that started the Mary Kay 5 o'clock club. When I ask an audience of new independent sales directors how many are willing to join the club, it's amazing how many hands go up. Okay, that's great, I say. Now, one of these mornings, I'm going to give you a call at 5:30, and I'm going to ask you to read the 6 most important things to do list. How many of you will still want to be in the 5 o'clock club? Surprisingly, they still raise their hands, and I have been known to follow through on that call. From the very beginning, we teach each independent beauty consultant the importance of follow-through. She's taught to regularly call her customers and say, tell me how you are doing. How is the product working for you? We're probably the only cosmetics company in the world whose representatives routinely follow up with customers after she's made the purchase. The beauty consultant doesn't do it to get more business because the customer hasn't had time to use up what she initially bought. She follows up like this because if there's a problem, she wants to nip it in the bud. Suppose, for an instance, a customer's facial skin was still too dry. The beauty consultant would substitute another skincare formula and maintain contact to ensure the customer is completely satisfied. 2 months after that contact, the new beauty consultant is encouraged to follow up again with the customer. To make this easier, we provide her with a filing tab system that reminds her when the customer is ready to reorder. Success in our business depends on customer satisfaction. A one-time order is not what we're after. Every beauty consultant is taught to give outstanding service, which is by far the best way to ensure repeat business. Those beauty consultants who apply this special brand of follow-through with their customers are the ones who eventually become the best sales directors. After all my years of experience in selling, I would conclude that servicing the customer is the common denominator shared by all great salespeople and sales leaders. Advanced technology helps Mary Kay continue to provide cutting-edge support for independent sales force members with access to internet connection. An independent beauty consultant can log into company-managed database systems and provide individualized business profile that provides individualized business profiles, including sales data and goal tracking information, as well as recognition. Other functions help her organize customer contact timetables and product preferences. Additionally, everything from late-breaking company news to educational material is available online. Independent National Sales Director Daylene White, who was the very first Mary Kay independent beauty consultant, once conducted an interesting experiment. She called the New York Stock Exchange to ask the price of one piece of gold. Next, she weighed out 1 ounce of pink tickets. carbons of her company's sales receipts and began calling those customers for reorders. At the end of the day, the profits from those sales was greater than the value of an ounce of gold. Wow! In calling her customers, she had effectively proved the wisdom of follow-through. Outstanding leaders extend the same degree of follow-through to their sales team by asking, "Tell me about your day." After listening carefully, she might add, "If you don't mind, I'd like to make a few calls with you tomorrow and see if I can offer some assistance." Do your homework. This chapter contains several examples of following through with projects. All rely on a personal technique that can be called doing your homework. Whether following through with a major change within the company, such as when we responded to the national sales director and reevaluated current practices, or whether following through on a single customer's preference for a lip color. The task is much simpler if you learn how to research, organize, prepare, and practice. If you have ever faced an audience, then you understand the importance of doing your homework. A well-delivered speech requires researching your subject, organizing, preparing your material, and practicing your delivery. Very few people can give an outstanding impromptu speech, although a good speaker often leaves you with the impression that he has. But timing and delivery must be rehearsed again and again until the actual speech comes across as spontaneous. I, for instance, like many other speakers, have delivered my share of spur-of-the-moment speeches, and people have expressed surprise that I was able to speak for more than an hour without notes. "You were wonderful, Mary Kay. You have such a talent for speaking without any preparation." For the record, however, those speeches that I am best prepared to give, those are the speeches that I am best prepared to give. There are many subjects that over the years I have learned so well I don't need additional preparation to speak about them. But let me emphasize that it took years to get to the point where I'm armed with enough experiences to tell my story extemporaneously. Even today, if I agree to give a speech on a topic outside of my expertise, I'll spend hours preparing for it. The most important weekly events within the independent sales force are the sales director unit meetings. Monday seems to be the best time for these meetings because it marks a new beginning. To some people, this is the end of a carefree weekend and referred to as Blue Monday. In addition to being informative, these meetings provide both inspiration and motivation. Even if the last week's sales were poor, there's a new week to start fresh. We often say, if you had a bad week, you need the meeting. If you had a good week, the meeting needs you. When a beauty consultant leaves a sales meeting full of enthusiasm, she has an entire week to let her enthusiasm work for her. It is essential for a sales director to conduct an effective meeting, but it doesn't just happen. She has to do her homework. If she doesn't, the women in her unit won't get anything useful out of the meeting, and they will stop attending soon. They won't get dressed and go each week if nothing is accomplished. If attendance falls off, the production of her unit will take a nosedive, so we can generally tell which sales directors aren't conducting stimulating meetings. At any given time, we have many new sales directors who have not become adept at running an effective meeting. Knowing how important these meetings are, we help each sales director do her homework. Detailed planning material is made available for these purposes. We want beauty consultants to be experts on both product and skincare techniques. While it's important for all salespeople to know their business thoroughly, we feel particularly strong about this point because those beauty consultants conduct skincare classes. As instructors, they have an added responsibility over and above the average salesperson. In order to be an expert, each of them must pay the price demanded and do her homework. It's presumptuous for any salesperson to walk into a prospect's office without being adequately prepared to give a complete and informative presentation. Yet I've witnessed many who were so inept that they couldn't even answer the most basic questions about their products. When this happens, a salesperson is not only wasting the other person's time, but insulting him as well. Naturally, there are times when a legitimate question is asked of a salesperson and she can't answer it on the spot. For example, If a new beauty consultant is asked, what is the pH factor of this cleansing cream? She might reply, no one has asked me that question before, but I'll find out and get back with you with the answer. Of course, a salesperson's job involves other forms of homework in addition to product knowledge and selling techniques. There are many behind-the-scenes details that must be addressed. Being well organized is vital if you are to maximize the use of your time. Back in the 1960s, my late husband, Mel, was a manufacturer's representative, and he was a real pro at researching his customers. He even went so far to keep a little black book with such information as customers' special interests, including hobbies, sports, spouse's name, children's names, receptionist, secretary's name, and he even knew what kinds of flowers and candies to send to the secretary. These two were jotted down in his little black book. He traveled to Cleveland, for instance, and called on 10 different accounts, knowing all kinds of personal data about them. Mel never had a problem getting in because he was so liked by everyone. He did his homework, and it paid off. As a people manager, you too have a constant selling job. Although you might not sell an actual product or service, you must sell your ideas in order to gain the support of others with whom you work. With this in mind, you must prepare in advance for every meeting. Doing your homework for a meeting with a single person is just as important as it is for a staff meeting. A board of directors meeting, a convention, and an audience of thousands. It would be foolhardy to do otherwise. As an example of how we should prepare for a meeting, let me elaborate about that National Sales Directors meeting discussed at the beginning of the chapter. If you will recall, there was one major topic up for discussion. Before the meeting, we came up with every conceivable fact that was pertinent. We could only anticipate the comments and questions the national sales directors might present to us, but whatever they were, we wanted to be fully prepared. My son Richard presided, and he had all kinds of information at his fingertips. He was able to cite how current economic factors related to inflation, unemployment, and disposable income that might affect our efforts. He also rattled off statistics to draw a parallel between the present and past years based on like and unlike periods. He discussed certain current trends in the direct sales industry and how they might possibly affect the independent sales force. There wasn't a question on the subject that Richard hadn't researched, and everyone was impressed by the extent of his presentation. While such preparation obviously makes for a well-run meeting, it also accomplishes something else. It generates confidence in leadership ability. People are annoyed when somebody leading a meeting is unprepared. They're likely to think he's completely disorganized or simply doesn't care. In either case, those attitudes are self-defeating. Good people managers convey the impression that they are both efficient and caring. There is a great deal of truth in the adage, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Somehow they always seem to have the capacity to take on one more project. I know the top executives in Dallas who are repeatedly called upon by the communities to support various charitable and civic causes. No matter how busy they are with their careers and extracurricular activities, they somehow muster up additional time and energy, and they never fail to do a superior job. They are greatly admired by the community because they have earned the reputations of being people who follow through on their commitments. I also think it takes a great deal of time management skill for a woman to wear the many hats of wife, mother, homemaker, chauffeur, cook, psychologist, etc., and put the long hours of volunteer work into her community. A woman who can accomplish so much must practice follow-through. And although her resume may show that she has never worked for remuneration, in my book, her background qualifies her for many positions in the business world. Among the Mary Kay Independent Sales Force, we see many women who enter job markets for the first time. Over the years, I have observed that those who are blessed with the most talent don't necessarily perform everyone else. It's the people with follow-through who excel. This is true in all walks of life, in business, sports, the arts. I see it constantly in the sales field, and you can see it happen with young people in school. The top students in a class aren't necessarily those with the highest IQs. They're the ones with the best study habits. They consistently follow through every day with their assignments. The real achievers in this world are those who follow through in all things, big or small. Okay, that was chapter 7.